The old man who lived on the second floor of our building was known to everyone, not just as a resident, but as a presence. He carried with him a quiet warmth that seemed to soften the edges of daily life. He greeted people with a gentle smile, spoke softly, and always had time for a kind word. Some said he was deeply spiritual, a man who spent hours in prayer or contemplation. Others simply saw him as someone who never harmed anyone, who radiated a rare calmness. He had no children of his own. That was something people often whispered about in hushed tones, as if it were a fragile truth. But he never appeared bitter about it. Instead, he seemed to pour all his affection into his extended family. He lived in a joint family setup with his younger brother, his brother's wife, and their 4 children. The house was always lively, voices echoing, footsteps rushing, laughter spilling into the corridor. Amid that noise, the old man was like a steady flame. Among all the children, he was especially close to the youngest nephew. Let's call him Bala. Bala adored his uncle in a way that was difficult to describe. It was not just respect, it was attachment. He followed him around as a child, listened to his stories, sat beside him during prayers, and often chose his company over anyone else's. As Bala grew older, that bond only deepened. It was as if there was an unspoken understanding between them. The uncle, too, seemed to favor Bala in a quiet but noticeable way. He would save small treats for him, call him to sit beside him during meals, and sometimes spend hours talking only to him while the rest of the household carried on around them. No one thought much of it. It was natural. After all, the man had no children. Perhaps Bala had simply filled that empty space. The day the old man died was unexpectedly still. It wasn't dramatic. There was no chaos, no loud cries at first, just a slow spreading realization that something had ended. By the time word spread through the building, relatives had already begun arriving. People gathered in the house, filling every corner. The air was thick with grief, whispers, and the faint scent of incense. Some women sat together, quietly weeping. Others murmured prayers. Men stood in small groups, speaking in low voices. The old man's wife was inconsolable. She sat near the body, her eyes swollen, her voice breaking as she cried. His younger brother looked shattered, trying to stay strong, but unable to hide his grief. And then there was Bala. From the moment the news broke, something about him felt off. He didn't cry, he didn't speak, he didn't move much either. He stood in a corner of the room, slightly apart from everyone else. His face was pale, his eyes distant. People assumed he was in shock. After all, he had been the closest to the old man. Poor boy, someone whispered. He must be devastated. His stillness began to feel unnatural. People approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder, offering condolences as if he were the bereaved son. He didn't respond. He didn't even seem to register their presence. His gaze remained fixed somewhere far away. His silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, unsettling. As the day progressed, preparations for the last rites began. The atmosphere grew more intense. Rituals were arranged, instructions were given, and people moved in a more purposeful manner. The time had come to carry the body out. Traditionally, close family members were expected to offer a shoulder. "Come, Beta," an elder said gently. "You should help carry him." There was no response. They tried again, this time a bit more firmly. "Bala, come forward." Still nothing. He stood frozen, as if he hadn't heard a word. A few relatives exchanged glances. One of them walked up to him and lightly shook his arm. "Bala?" He didn't react. It was as though he had turned into a statue, alive, yet completely detached. After a few more attempts, the family decided not to insist. Others stepped forward and took their positions. The body was lifted. Slowly, carefully, it was carried toward the door. And that's when everything changed. Just as the procession reached a few steps outside the house, a sudden, piercing scream shattered the silence. Everyone froze. It came from behind, from Bala. At first, it sounded like a cry of grief, loud, raw, uncontrollable. But within seconds, people realized something was terribly wrong. The voice didn't sound like Bala. It was deeper, older, unfamiliar, yet eerily recognizable. He shouted again, "I want Bala!" The words echoed through the corridor, sending a chill down everyone's spine. People turned in horror. Bala was no longer standing still. His body was trembling, his face contorted in a way no one had ever seen before. His eyes looked wild, almost unrecognizable. "I want Bala," he screamed again, but this time there was no doubt. It sounded exactly like his uncle's voice. A wave of panic spread through the crowd. Some people instinctively stepped back. Others rushed toward him, unsure of what they were witnessing. "Hold him," someone shouted, but Bala didn't seem like himself anymore. He lunged forward suddenly, his movements aggressive and erratic. Before anyone could react, he broke into a run, straight toward the open courtyard, and beyond that, the well, a deep old well that stood just a short distance from the house. "I want Bala," he kept shouting, his voice echoing with an unnatural intensity. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if fear had rooted them to the ground. Then reality struck. If he reaches the well... Several men sprinted after him. Catching him was not easy. Despite his relatively small frame, Bala seemed to possess an unnatural strength. When the first two men grabbed him, he threw them off with shocking force. Another joined in, then another, but Bala fought back violently. He thrashed, pushed, and struggled with a ferocity that no one expected. His voice continued to ring out, repeating the same chilling words, "I want Bala." It made no sense. He was Bala, yet he was calling out for himself in someone else's voice. It took nearly 10 men to finally bring him down. They forced him to the ground, pinning his arms and legs. Even then, he continued to resist, his body jerking, his voice rising and falling in terrifying bursts. Some of the older women began praying loudly. The entire scene had descended into chaos. Someone rushed forward with a bucket of cold water. Without hesitation, they poured it over Bala. For a brief moment, he went silent. Then he screamed again, louder than before. His father pushed through the crowd, his face filled with desperation. "Bala, look at me," he shouted, kneeling beside him. But Bala didn't seem to recognize him. Not yet. His eyes were unfocused, his breathing erratic. Another bucket of water was brought.